What if the unthinkable had happened? The unstoppable legions of Rome, masters of the ancient world, pitted against the fearsome Mongol hordes, the terror of the medieval era. Could the Mongols, with their lightning-fast cavalry and brilliant strategies, have defeated the mighty Roman Empire? Strap in as we dive deep into this clash of titans, exploring their military might, strategies, and the potential outcomes of this ultimate what-if scenario. To assess whether the Mongols could have defeated Rome, we first need to understand what they were up against. At its height, the Roman Empire was a colossal force. By 117 AD, under Emperor Trajan, Rome ruled over vast territories stretching from Britain to Egypt and from Spain to the Persian Gulf. Rome's strength lay in its disciplined military. The Roman legion, consisting of highly trained soldiers, was the backbone of their empire. With advanced tactics, superior weaponry, and a rigid command structure, the legions were nearly unbeatable on the battlefield. Add to that the Roman engineering marvels like roads, fortifications, and logistics, and you had an empire that was built to last. But it wasn't just the military that made Rome powerful. The Roman economy, politics, and culture were integral to their dominance. They could muster huge resources, mobilize vast populations, and maintain an empire through their vast network of roads and bureaucracy. Now let's travel nearly 1,000 years forward to the early 13th century, where another empire was rising, one that would challenge and reshape the world like no other. Led by Genghis Khan, the Mongols quickly transformed from a collection of nomadic tribes into one of the greatest military machines in history. The Mongols were fierce, adaptable, and above all, highly mobile. Their cavalry could cover vast distances in record time, striking where the enemy least expected it. They were experts in hit-and-run tactics, psychological warfare, and feigned retreats, which lured their enemies into deadly traps. The key to their success was their mastery of horse archery. The Mongol horsemen could fire arrows with deadly accuracy while riding at full speed, outmaneuvering most armies of the time. The Mongols also had a knack for absorbing new technology, using siege engines and gunpowder weapons to conquer fortified cities. Let's compare the military might of these two empires. On one hand, you have the Roman legions, heavily armed, disciplined, and trained to fight in tight formation. Roman soldiers carried short swords, the gladius, and large shields, the scutum, excelling in close-quarter combat. Their battlefield tactics were all about coordination, strength, and using their formations like an unstoppable wall of steel. Roman engineers also played a huge role in their success. Wherever they marched, they built roads, bridges, and fortified camps that could protect their soldiers and extend supply lines. They could wage prolonged sieges and grind down their enemies over time. On the other hand, the Mongols were all about speed, flexibility, and unpredictability. Their cavalry could attack, retreat, and strike again before the enemy even knew what hit them. The Mongols also had access to advanced siege technology they had borrowed from the Chinese, making them a double threat on the battlefield, dominating in both open warfare and sieges. So, what would happen if these two forces met? Let's say the Mongols invaded during the height of Rome's power, perhaps around the 2nd century AD. The first advantage the Mongols would have is their mobility. Roman legions were formidable in formation, but the Mongols could easily outflank them and launch devastating hit-and-run attacks. The Romans' large shields would protect them from some of the arrows, but over time, they would be worn down by the sheer speed and maneuverability of the Mongols. The Romans could try to close the distance and engage in hand-to-hand combat, but the Mongols would likely avoid direct confrontations, preferring to whittle the Romans down with continuous skirmishes. However, in a siege situation, the Romans would have the advantage. The Mongols were adept at laying sieges, but Roman cities were heavily fortified. Roman engineers could build impressive defenses, and the legions were experts at holding fortified positions for long periods. This might frustrate the Mongols, who excelled in open terrain, but struggled against prolonged, well-defended sieges. One of the key factors in this hypothetical scenario would be geography. The Mongols, operating from the steppes of Central Asia, would need to cover vast distances to even reach Roman territory. While the Mongols were famous for their ability to move quickly, maintaining supply lines over such a long distance could be a logistical nightmare. Rome, on the other hand, had a well-developed infrastructure with a vast network of roads, ports, and supply chains that would allow them to move reinforcements and supplies efficiently. The Mongols would be at a disadvantage, having to rely on foraging or rapid conquests to sustain their armies. Beyond military tactics, there's also the question of psychological warfare. The Mongols were masters of terror, often using extreme brutality to demoralize their enemies before a battle even began. They would send out envoys offering cities the chance to surrender. If they didn't comply, the Mongols would slaughter entire populations as a warning to others. But the Romans were no strangers to brutality themselves. They had fought countless wars against barbarians, Gauls, and other foreign invaders, and they had no qualms about using force to maintain order. While the Mongols' fear tactics might work against smaller or weaker enemies, the Romans would likely stand firm, especially if their core territories were threatened.